Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod. I'm your host, Josh, and today is going to be the opinion of myself about Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Initially, I had a roundtable that we did fresh after our first viewing, but I decided to can it because it ended up being quite negative, and I don't want this to be a negative thing. And I wanted to see it a second time. Now that I have two viewings under my belt, I'm giving you my own personal opinion about the film. And I've tried to keep it a little lighter, especially since the roundtable. So keep an open mind. Thank you. Here we go.
Another happy landing.
If you've been listening to the show before, you might be familiar with my opinion about the sequels, and I don't think too highly of them. It's that's just a personal opinion of mine. I don't hate them with a passion or anything. Unlike some that hate some of the films throughout the series. No titles mentioned, but you know what? I mean, I've always been a Star Wars fan, and George Lucas has been an inspiration of mine, and I would not be working the career that I have in the film industry right now if it weren't for him. Probably he's been a massive inspiration on my life and many others who decide to follow that path as well in the filmmaking career. As an inspiration to all those people and to fans in general, I think when Disney took the torch and wanted to make the sequel trilogy happen after he sold the company, the creative direction changed, and we got The Force Awakens and so on and so forth. It was at that point when they did the whole direction shift that I ended up feeling a little uneasy about things, and when I walked out of The Force Awakens, I did feel very almost questioning what was going to come, and I felt a little uneasy about it. So now that I've seen the finale to this trilogy, I can't say that I'm the biggest fan of it, and I'll get into that later on. I don't want you to think that this is a hate speech about the film or anything. There was some things that I liked, and there were some things that I didn't like. I'm a bit of a mixed bag on this one. Honestly, first off, I just want to say it's probably the best out of the sequels that I've seen so far. And, I'm looking forward to you hearing what I have to say about it. So please stick around. And, at some points throughout this thing, I'm sure you're going to be yelling at me, screaming at me, wanting to give feedback or shoot me an answer that I might have a question about. And if you do, then please just send an email, theescapepod@outlook.com, or send us a tweet at SWEscapePodcast. Those will be listed in the description on the podcast itself on this episode. But before we kind of get off into the discussion about Episode 9, I want this little snippet of the Charlie Rose interview by George Lucas. He's talking about Star Wars. And he talks about his initial opinion about the way that Force Awakens was headed, and what Star Wars is actually about. This is the maker, George Lucas, talking about what Star Wars is to him, and what it is intended to be. So let's take a listen to this and keep it in the back of your mind as I go forward with my discussion.
The upcoming Star Wars, The Force Awakens. How do you feel about it?
Well, it's, I made the decision to sell the company, the Star Wars. I made that decision because I looked at the future. I looked at the fact that I was going to have a baby. I looked at the fact that I was married. And I looked at the fact that I wanted to build a museum. And I looked at the fact that I wanted to make experimental films. So my life was going on a different track. I noticed the last few movies that I'd made were costing the company a lot of money. And I didn't think that was fair to the people that worked there or the company. And so I had made a decision to move ahead on the next Star Wars series, and we were starting to do that.
So you were starting to make the next Star Wars.
Yeah.
You as director, filmmaker.
So, and we were working with a writer. It wasn't quite working out, but I was also, I was also stepping away a little bit and turning things over to Kathy Kennedy. And so what happened was Disney said, or Bob Iger said, if you really want to sell your company, if you're thinking about selling it, because we were talking about retirement and what are you going to do after all this kind of stuff. And he said, well, if you really want to sell it, we're very interested. So that started that ball rolling. And I knew from, and I had the story treatments or, outlines. And we were we were working on scripts. And so I sold it. But I knew when I sold it, I said, I've tried to make movies where I step away, to sort of Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Right.
And after about a couple of weeks, I knew I couldn't do that. I had to stand over the shoulder of the director, help him, whisper in his ear constantly, no, do this, do that, and be there to help guide it. And it was much harder than if I just directed it myself.
J.J. Abrams?
J.J. Abrams, he's a good director and he's a good friend and all this sort of thing. But he's also a top director, his own company and all this other stuff. And Disney, who was a little nervous, there's one of the issues was the first three movies had all kinds of issues. They looked at the stories and they said, we want to make something for the fans. So I said, all I wanted to do was tell a story of what happened. It started here and it went there. And it's all about generations and it's about, the issues of fathers and sons and grandfathers. And it's a family soap opera. I mean, ultimately, we call it space opera, but people don't realize it's actually a soap opera. Yeah. And it's all about family problems and it's not about spaceships. So they decided they didn't want to use those stories. They decided they were going to go do their own thing. And so I decided, fine. But basically, I'm not going to try to, they weren't that keen to have me involved anyway. But at the same time, I said, I'm not going to, if I get in there, I'm just going to cause trouble because they're not going to do what I want them to do. So, and I don't have the control to do that anymore. And all I would do is muck everything up. So I said, okay, I will go my way and I'll let them go their way.
So yeah, just keep that in the back of your head. I feel pretty negative towards the entire sequel trilogy in general, but I'm a Star Wars fan and I want to live by what I've said before about being a fan of things. Like, we have our ups and downs with what we're given and we like and dislike things here and there. It's never going to be a perfect uphill ride all the time, every day. Yeah, there's the odd book that I'm not a fan of. Yeah, there's the odd comic that I'm kind of bored reading. And there will be the odd movie that I just don't connect with. And it's more sad for me to know that there was a plan to make George's sequel films and then just wasn't made. And yes, you could argue the fact that, he has stated, fans might not have liked it. But that's because he knows that he tells his story. He's a real filmmaker. This guy will tell his story whether fans like it or not. And he doesn't care. He doesn't care. Clone Wars was paid for. It wasn't making a lot of profit, and he had a story he wanted to tell. It was probably I think it was one of the main reasons why Disney canceled it. Aside from their early on prequelitis that they had, it was costing the company a lot of money to make, and it wasn't generating enough revenue for them to keep the project alive. And the prequels were a very risky thing to do. When George made Empire Strikes Back as well, he forked out all his own money to make that film, and I would say he got a pretty good return. But it was all his own, his story. This is his passion project that he wanted to do, and it's almost like taking the Lord of the Rings and splitting Return of the King in half, and then having some other author finish that story. It just doesn't resonate with the people who know, who really connect with the words that J.R.R. Tolkien has been getting across to the readers for the last so many years as those books were released. They would recognize a change in narrative. And as a Star Wars fan, I mean, you can justify these films all you want, but the narrative has changed. And George Lucas being the maker, I don't think that the prequels changed much of the narrative in the original trilogy at all. I feel like it added more depth to them, introducing us to who Anakin Skywalker used to be, the prophecy of the Chosen One. Adds a lot more to his redemption and his sacrifice that he made, and just increases the overall depth of this legacy. And the sequels, I feel, have just been very tacked on to the end. Tacked on being like stapled on, like, and The Last Jedi being the tape that's been holding these films to the other six. But I don't want this to be a review of negativity. Like I said, I didn't use the round table for that reason. So I want to start off by just giving a list of things that I like about the film. And then I'm going to get into the things that I don't like about the film. So working our way through the movie, beginning to end. All right. I love the fact that there's this Sith world we don't know about called Exegol throughout canon. If you're aware of the whole canon shift that Disney, when they bought the company, they established the expanded universe's legends to make room for their own stories that would be solidified as canon books, canon stories that would contribute to a cohesive narrative, which is the world we live in today. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, for example, being, I would say, the crown of all cohesive stories told over a span of many years. We've got multiple movies a year out of that series, and all of them link towards one narrative and one universe, one shared story, one shared universe. And, fans were well paid off with the finale of Endgame and Infinity War over the last 2 years. And I gotta say, man, like those movies have just been amazing examples of what a series that hasn't even been around that long for have had such an epic conclusion. So I love the fact that this Sith world Exegol exists throughout some of the canon Disney books. Palpatine has sensed this dark presence beyond the unknown regions, and I hate the term headcanon, by the way, just so you know, headcanon. I don't think there's such a thing as headcanon. It's fair enough to say this is what makes the most sense in my head, filling up the gaps that, there are the things that we don't have facts for. But yeah, headcanon, I've always thought that term was a little strange, so I'm not going to be using that. But what makes sense to me is Palpatine sensing this dark presence out in the unknown regions that we've read about. I like to think that it is Exegol. I like to think that a lot of fans speculated it was Snoke. Now we know that Snoke is Palpatine's creation. I like to think that this dark presence was perhaps this Sith world that we never knew about. We do have Moraband, aka Korriban. They both exist as the same name within canon. Korriban was the ancient name, and Moraband is also in canon the same planet, and the name that it is referred to by the time of the Clone Wars, and in existing sequel trilogy era stories. So this is not Moraband. Exegol is its own planet that exists beyond the unknown regions, and we don't really know much about this planet. This is new to the series, new for the Rise of Skywalker, but I did like the idea of this planet, and that was one thing I that was the first thing on my list that I probably liked. The opening scene of Kylo Ren ripping apart these natives. Now, they didn't exactly confirm this, but I think the visual dictionary kind of kind of discloses the fact that the planet in the beginning is actually Mustafar. So I like the fact that we got to see Mustafar again. It would have been cooler to see the remnants of Vader's castle, because I guess that's kind of where we're supposed to be at that point of the story. If I'm wrong, please, again, shoot some feedback our way. Tweet. By the way, if you do hear of anything throughout the podcast that you're probably screaming at me for, again, send us a tweet, SW Escape Podcast, or an email, theescapepod@outlook.com. If I say something that you want to have any feedback on, or you might have an answer via the visual dictionary, which I do not own yet, and I might not own it at all. I don't intend to buy the visual dictionaries, but if you do have that and you have an answer for me, that'd be great. So shoot it my way. But other than that, I like the fact that we got to see Mustafar again, if that is Mustafar, and the remnants around, I guess it's Vader's castle or something. It was cool that they linked that to the VR Vader Immortal trilogy, the Lady Korvax's storyline, and the eventual recovery of Mustafar as a planet with life on it, because we did get to see some trees in the forestry area that Kylo Ren was taking out all these people on. So it was cool seeing these Sith Wayfinder devices. Now this is kind of interesting. These Wayfinder devices theoretically were made, I guess, by Palpatine, I'm assuming. There's two in existence, I believe. I think there was. There's one that Kylo Ren recovers from Vader's castle, and there's the other one that's found at the Death Star wreckage. So I like to think that Vader has one and the Emperor has one, and both of them are able to use this to get to Exegol. So assumingly Exegol is a planet that's been known to Palpatine for a while, and that he's been storing these Imperial resources on Exegol for a buildup of time, preparing for the Final Order, and the First Order being something that comes in and cleanses, the galaxy of, I guess, what we know as the New Republic. The Aftermath trilogy set it up a little different. I don't want to say that this movie does a massive job at retconning things, but it does add questions to my head. The Battle of Jakku was a very big plot point. If you've read the Aftermath trilogy, you'll know that the Battle of Jakku was intended to draw all the New Republic / Rebel forces into battle against the last stand that the Empire was making. And there was an idea to blow up this planet, Jakku, that is. Amongst the protagonists of the story, they stopped this evil plot from happening. But the idea was that the planet would blow up, destroying both the Empire and the New Republic forces, and essentially eradicating the galaxy and leaving a clean slate. Assumingly have the First Order come in and establish order against on the galaxy, I guess. Something like that. If you have anything to say about that, please let me know. And it kind of linked up with that, I guess. Palpatine, he had this whole contingency plan through the Battlefront 2 campaign. We had Palpatine's Sentinels show up, delivering messages. He had a bunch of different things going on across the galaxy. He even had a attack on his own homeworld of Naboo, and there was things along the way that the contingency plan was basically a plan that devised by the Emperor for the future of the Empire in the event of his death. That's essentially what the contingency plan was, and Gallius Rax was the protege of the Emperor, who was basically given charge to execute this entire plan. And there's many videos and articles about this online, so you can catch up on that all as well. But the plot was to destroy Jakku and allowing a small number of Imperial remnants to basically survive. The establishment of the First Order in the unknown regions to rebuild the Empire was part of that whole initial thing. Operation Cinder was a big deal in there. The Battle of Fondor, skirmish on Vardos, and the Battle of Theed on Naboo. The attack on Abednedo, the destruction of Necronis, and the Battle of Jakku. So there's a bunch of battles that happened throughout the whole contingency plan and everything. And I'm the reason why I'm talking about all of this is because there was a big setup, a big journey to the Force Awakens movement that happened through comics and everything. Read Shattered Empire, great little miniseries that kind of takes place right after Return of the Jedi. There's been plenty of content that has come out through novels, and keep in mind, this is all Disney's canon stuff that has essentially set up the First Order. And this movie that came out, it essentially felt like, to me, that the direction of everything that has been leading up in the last 5 years shifted last minute. And we all know Palpatine was not supposed to come back. This was Colin Trevorrow's movie, and he had not written the film. What we got in the end was what we've just seen. So the plan was never to bring Palpatine back. And it really affects kind of like what we've read about so far, what has been leading up so far. I feel like a lot of the investments in books over the last 5 years is questionable. But yeah, that aside, I liked that opening stuff of the film. I liked the Wayfinder devices, that there's two, one for Vader, one for Palpatine. I thought the reveal of Palpatine was pretty cool. That device that he's attached to is awesome. Now, my initial reaction is that this is the Palpatine that we know of, that we've seen before. This is not a clone of Palpatine. I think any reference to cloning has to do with the creation and manufacturing of Snoke. And from what we've seen in those test tubes, when Kylo Ren walks through the catacombs on Exegol, it's very apparent that he's made Snoke, playing around with life and all that. And he references the little talk he gives Anakin about unnatural power being given through the dark side of the Force, and it's just a lot of hinting. It's a lot of vagueness, a lot of hinting at like, okay, fill in the gaps with whatever you want for now until we come out with a book or a comic or something that fills in this hole. So yeah, I like the reveal of Palpatine, and the moment that we see Rey. I liked Rey's whole training with Leia. That was awesome. I mean, I want to say that this is the movie that I expected to see a little more of that. And it's a shame that Carrie Fisher never made it around to this movie. I feel like it would have been a lot different. Colin Trevorrow might have even completed his script if Carrie had survived. But she was supposed to play a big part in this movie. The moment where we see her floating with the rocks, that was really cool. I like how Leia has become essentially her new master. Leia has embraced her full knowledge of the Force, and what we find out later to be her life as her life as a general and a senator, and I guess the first senator, if you've been following the new canon. Excuse me. Yeah, it's cool to see her kind of return to her roots as a Skywalker and train the next generation of Jedi, filling in for Luke's shoes. It's a beautiful thing to see. So I liked the whole Rey reveal, the training course that she goes through, and yeah. Let's see what else I like about the new movie. I loved seeing some of the return of some of these ships that they found in the past. As we know from Resistance Reborn, the Resistance has sent out a crew to essentially recover some of these old ships. And yeah, it was cool. It was cool to see the return of like A-Wings and Y-Wings and such. So that was interesting. We got a lot more 3PO in this movie. I got to say, it felt a lot more Star Wars with 3PO in it. It's what we've had for 6 movies in a row, and it's not something we've had for the last 2. And, I've got my problems with those movies, but this one seemed to really nail the fact that, 3PO, bring him back, bring him back part of the main cast. That's a cool thing to see. We also got a lot more of R2 at least. He's not exactly replacing BB-8 through the sequels, but we did see a lot more of him, and that was cool. He's not under a rug for the whole movie, so that was nice. He's not under a blanket hiding out. It was nice to have him back, and I gotta say, Adam Driver nailed this movie. He was a fantastic actor. He brought so much depth to Ben Solo and to Kylo Ren. And when the shift happens for his character in the movie, it was so good. I just, I can't give any more praise for this movie other than like the whole conclusion to Ben Solo's arc through this trilogy. I got to say is probably the highlight of this trilogy. If you disagree, no offense, but you're kind of crazy. This being the Skywalker saga, this is really supposed to be about the Skywalker saga. I mean, Skywalker lineage, and he's the only kind of next generation Skywalker that we see through the sequels. And this movie really changes that narrative a little bit towards the end, and I'm less of a fan of kind of the conclusion of this movie, but we'll get to that later. Ben Solo was awesome. Adam Driver rocks, and I got to say he's probably the best part of this movie. There was a fantastic scene with Harrison Ford, Han Solo. The whole him after he fights Rey, which was it was an improvement on a lightsaber duels that we've seen through the sequel so far. It was a little more on the epic scale, but there was a viciousness to it, and we've never seen a lightsaber duel end this way before, where one person just gets tired and just gets knocked down. That was really cool to see. When Rey is fighting Kylo Ren, and she clearly just gets so tired, and easily Kylo Ren just knocks her down, and he has the upper hand. He could have killed her, and he doesn't, because Leia essentially lies down and has a nap, and I don't know what she does, but I like to think that she, with most of her life force, which is a term I think might come up again soon, but most of her life force exits her body. So essentially she's dying. And I like to think that that she I guess in spirit enters the heart of her son. He senses his mother's passing, and yet her body doesn't disappear yet. So, her transcendence into the Force happens much later in the film. But I liked how he pauses and just he doesn't care. He doesn't care anymore about harming Rey, and I don't think he wants to. But that was a really cool moment to see, and then what concludes as Rey stabs him in the gut, and he just doesn't care. He kind of shrugs it off and slumps down, and with the death of his mother, it really affects him like so hard, and it's very similar to what we had with Anakin and his mother, except with Anakin, he's a very possessive guy. Like this is also what drove him to the dark side. Is the possessive love that he had for Padme. He wasn't willing to pursue any other direction rather than to give up everything for the dark side just to save his wife. And with his mother's passing, it was similar. He gave into the dark side so quickly just to destroy the beings that hurt her, and as a result, took her life due to injury. Ben Solo, on the other hand, he takes a lot from his uncle, I guess, when he's so shocked at the passing of his mother that he just gives up. He just slumps over and he's like, this is it. I don't care what happens anymore. And it hurts him very deeply. But Rey heals him and says this amazing line about how she wanted to take his hand when he offered it, but she didn't want to take Kylo Ren's hand. She wanted to take Ben Solo's hand. And I really liked that. That was a really cool callback to The Last Jedi. And, I think that was also a beautiful part of the movie. And I loved what followed with Harrison Ford. The memory of him was one of the most emotional parts of the movie. I would have loved if there was more emotion in this movie. I feel like Return of the King and Endgame with Tony Stark's death had a much more impactful ending for me. And as a Star Wars fan, it's kind of sad to say, I actually, I think I shed a tear when I saw Revenge of the Sith when I was 5 years old. Or sorry, not 5 years old. I was in grade 5. Grade 5, Revenge of the Sith came out, and I did shed a tear like when the movie started and when it ended, and it was just a very emotional moment for me back then. And many years later, I just haven't felt the same way about this movie. But again, I'm gonna save that for the end. I thought that this scene was very emotional. It didn't connect with me as much as it does with other people, but I think it was the best decision to make, is to bring Han Solo back. And this conversation between him and his son really was so well paralleled with what JJ had done in The Force Awakens. And I do want to commend him for that. That was really cool. It's something that we haven't had a lot in the sequel trilogy, is the parallels compared to the parallels that we've had in the other two trilogies done by George Lucas. That's one of the coolest parts about Star Wars, is seeing the connections between the beginning and last parts of a trilogy, and then the middle being the bridge. With The Phantom Menace, we had the end of the film with a very particular song, Qui-Gon's Funeral. And by the end of Revenge of the Sith, we had the same song on the same planet of Naboo, with another very important figure in Anakin's life on the deathbed, on having a funeral, which was his wife Padme. So, Anakin in The Phantom Menace, he says, "What will happen to me now?" And then Obi-Wan, recites the promise that he made Qui-Gon as they're there at the funeral, mind you, and says, the council's granted me permission to train you. You will be a Jedi, I promise you. And we see this amazing parallel of him becoming Darth Vader to the same song that that Qui-Gon gave his life and died for, fighting off the Sith. And just a really cool parallel, like, as you see Padme dead, and the birth of their children and the creation of Vader. They're both lying on tables as this whole thing is being done to the same music that was played at Qui-Gon's funeral. So it is a really cool parallel to see between the two movies. And I thought that this conversation between Han and Ben was also just as reminiscent of that, with the dialogue lining up so well. So that was kind of cool as well. There was a scene that was played for, because Rey, after this moment, runs off to Exegol, and she's basically doing what Luke did. She's giving up. She even says as much. And when Luke's Force Ghost shows up on Acto, and she's crashed Kylo Ren's ship there because she steals it, and flies there to Exegol, and she's mad. She's angry, and she takes the Skywalker saber, and she's ready to throw it away, and just like Luke once did. And fortunately, it landed on the cliff edge, and Rey recovered it. But she's ready to just give up. She's emotional about the fact that she just hurt Ben, someone that she does care about, and runs away. And she's given up. She's just completely done with people not knowing who she is. She's done with this vision of her ending up on the throne. She's fearful of it. She's fearful of facing the dark side and facing her, what she might think of as a destiny. It's what Kylo Ren's been taunting with her the whole time. It's like it's her destiny and her purpose to take up the right hand of the right side, between the two of them ruling over the galaxy together. And she's just so done. She doesn't want to follow that path. And it's admirable of her to want to protect the galaxy from herself, but she gives up just like Luke once did. And Luke comes back and he says, "Hey, kid, I was wrong. This is not the way to deal with something. The destiny of a Jedi is to face fear." And that's when, he comes back and gives her the lightsaber again. And he reveals that Leia would have wanted you to have something. At this point, Leia's what we know of, partially transcended into the Force. So, it makes me think, okay, maybe she's communicated with Luke in the netherworld of the Force. And Luke points towards, his hut where we see Rey digging through a stone and finds Leia's old lightsaber that Luke has stashed away in his place there, which we're led to believe has been there this whole time. And the lightsaber looked really cool, but the highlight for me, one of the highlights out of this whole movie was seeing CGI Luke and Leia as they were younger, training with their lightsabers on some forest planet somewhere, and it was so cool, man. Like Luke, Mark Hamill, he looked perfect. The Carrie Fisher Leia looked, it looked amazing. And, it was just, it was so gratifying to find out that Leia did, in fact, learn the ways of the Force. She did, in fact, train as a Jedi until the point where she was able to best her brother in a match, and then gives up her Jedi future because she fears that, her son will die if she continues on that path. And then, we're led to believe that she just continues her life on with that knowledge, but, continues on as a first senator. And as her life as a senator becomes before she comes first senator in the Bloodline book. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. I thought that was a really well-deserved, well-needed explanation, and, a great addition to the sequels and to this storyline. I thought it's I'm a bit of a mixed bag on this one, but I thought the whole Palpatine reveal that he was, just to backtrack a little bit, that he was the voice inside Kylo Ren's head this whole time. I get it. I mean, I'm aware of the fact that Palpatine was kind of stitched into the movie later on in the script, after they did the rewrites, when Colin Trevorrow exited the project. So it's a bit of a retroactive thing to do, but given that it's been done, I'm just trying to accept it, and yeah. But I thought it was interesting that he's revealed himself to be the creator of Snoke and the voice of Snoke, kind of almost using Snoke as a puppet, and using Darth Vader's recovered helmet as a puppet as well. Kylo Ren has been led to believe over the last year and a bit that this Vader helmet has been speaking to him through the Force on behalf of Darth Vader. And now we never got the audio dialogue in The Force Awakens, but we're now supposed to believe that this has been Sheev Palpatine the entire time. And, I thought it was interesting. I thought it was an interesting story choice. I think with time, I'm going to grow to appreciate I'm going to grow to accept it a little more. And yeah, that was something. I did like the General Pride character, although I'm a bit of a mixed bag on this one too. I feel like it was a missed opportunity for an appearance by Thrawn. Now, if you're not familiar with Star Wars Rebels or the Thrawn book series, Thrawn's entire purpose within the Empire, and part of the reason why he even exists within the Empire, because the Empire is a very xenophobic government. They don't have aliens working within the government, and Thrawn's entire purpose within the Empire was to collaborate with Palpatine and to give him astrogational knowledge about the unknown regions and about uncharted space. Now, we're also led to believe that this is evidence for some of the observatories that Emperor Palpatine had placed trailing out into the unknown regions. One of them being on Jakku, that one also being the one that would be responsible for blowing up the planet. But that whole plan ended up failing. And aside from the Aftermath books, we haven't really seen that observatory again. We got a second observatory showing up, though, in the Battlefront 2 campaign. It's also the observatory where Luke finds the Jedi compass, which I believe was found on Pilio. Luke Skywalker went there. And if you've read the Shattered Empire book, again, like, you know, if you've been following those adventures of Luke Skywalker after Return of the Jedi as a Jedi, he did do his own kind of exploration of the Force, and, you know, eventually his lead up to training the new generation of Jedi and then seeking out the first Jedi Temple. But this compass that he recovered from Emperor Palpatine's observatory on Pilio was, it's a compass. And rather than leave it there, and he ran into a character called Del Meeko who intended to destroy the observatory, who he ended up reluctantly letting him keep the compass because Luke had just saved his life. And I'm not entirely clear at what this compass was supposed to do, but apparently it was attuned to hyperspace vectors or something. It has a substance in it called supraluminite or something like that. And it's interesting. I mean, it's in the Last Jedi Visual Dictionary. I believe it might be in the Rise of Skywalker Visual Dictionary, and a little more might be revealed about it there. So, you know, if you got anything for me, please shoot it my way. Again, send us a tweet or an email. But these observatories were set up across the galaxy. And, in part, a large part of that was due to Thrawn's knowledge. That's, he disappears at the end of Star Wars Rebels. And all we know is that he and Ezra Bridger were shot out in hyperspace to the beyond, to the unknown regions. We have no idea what happened to them. And Dave Filoni has yet to make a follow-up animated series about, Ahsoka and Sabine Wren searching for Ezra Bridger and Thrawn and, such and such. But in The Rise of Skywalker, we did get Ahsoka's voice and Anakin's voice and, all these Jedi of the past showing up, empowering Rey at the very end before she makes her final stand. So we're led to believe, I guess Ahsoka's dead at this point, but otherwise she would be in her around her 70s or something like that, about at this point in time. But I felt like the General Pride character was cool, but it would have been a really cool opportunity to have Thrawn in that place. It would have been a nice placeholder for that character, and if JJ wasn't at the helm of this movie, obviously things might have been a little differently, and it's possible that General Pride's character could have been Thrawn in an early draft or something. I don't really know, because he has a few lines where he says to Palpatine that he will serve him as he did in the old wars, and essentially he's supposed to be made out to be this character who is probably one of the last original people in charge of I guess the First Order, one of the Moffs or one of the big shots that was in fact previously working for the Empire. And a lot of the people working for the First Order are not that old. Like they're in their 30s, maybe in their 40s, maybe even in their late 20s. I know that if you've read Resistance Reborn, we've even had employees as young as 15 working for the First Order. And of course, they're also known for kidnapping children and turning them into stormtroopers. So, it's he's an interesting character in regards to how long he's been doing what he's been doing, and for specifically for the all the Imperial factions that have come into play. But it would have, if we had the time, I'm sure it would have been cool to have Thrawn as a character there. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, General Pride, interesting character, and if we ever got more depth about him, it would be nice. But yeah, it would have been cool to see Thrawn in this film, given the fact that Pride felt very similar to a character like him. But what else? I mean, I gotta say, the return of Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker as a voiceover was cool. I really wanted to see him in the movie. It's been talked about that they may or may not have filmed footage of these old actors that have come back to reprise the role. But what can I say? I mean, we got the final cut that we got, and if that was cut from the movie, that's a real crying shame. But it was nice, and I believe it's been well deserved that this should have probably even shown up before. I know Rey has no connection to Anakin whatsoever, but Ben Solo does. It would have been nice to have a little connection between them, but at some point throughout the last two films. But here we are in the third movie, finally getting it. I'm not complaining. I'm just happy that he made it into the movie, even if it's at least a voiceover. I'm thankful that they brought him back. So that also solidifies the young Anakin Skywalker within the canon of things, with as far as immortality after death goes. Long live Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker. So yeah, I liked it. It was cool. Wish we got a little more, but that's just a wish. So what else? There was a very large following of Sith acolytes. Now, the Sith acolytes are something we also got that kind of came out of the Aftermath books, and I got to say, if this is the same group of people that we never saw their faces. I don't know if they're aliens under there or humans, but there was, I want to say, thousands of them in the arena where this ceremonial event is supposed to take place of the passing of Emperor from Palpatine to Rey. And it was interesting to see that a lot of them had shown up for this festivity. I don't know where they come from or where they live or what they do all day, but if they are the same, what we now know as this large following of Palpatine and the Sith, if they are the same group that we were introduced to in the Aftermath books as the Acolytes of the Beyond, then I'm down. I'm a fan. I'm a little confused at, I guess being Palpatine, I'm sure he foresaw the whole, Rey coming to Exegol and whatnot. Again, I'm just filling this with my conclusions to things. But if they are the Acolytes of the Beyond, then I commend Story Group for suggesting their existence within the context of this film. So I think the last thing that I liked more or less was the return to the Lars homestead and the Force ghost of Leia and Luke. As we're all aware, and of course, I enjoyed all the scenes that they wrote around the reused footage of Leia. can't leave that out. But I enjoyed the return of her. If they did use her face from another shot, they comped it into that double stand-in very well. And her, the Force ghost of her and Luke on Tatooine at the very end of the movie was awesome. And I gotta say, Dark Rey was kind of cool, I guess. It was an interesting little piece of the movie that kind of made it a little more varied, a little more extreme, and felt a little more out there. And that's what I like to see. I like to see a little more out there. I don't like the safe kind of feeling that they had in Force Awakens, and I appreciated this film for those reasons. That's also part of the reason why I like Last Jedi just a fraction more than The Force Awakens, is because it didn't bend over backwards on nostalgia, but it was a little more divisive, and they did things that we hadn't seen before. Another thing I did really like was I actually predicted this in when I saw the Mandalorian episode more recently, but Force healing made its way into this movie. It's something we've had in Expanded Universe for many years, and it was cool to see that make an appearance in canon, just as we've had the return of Thrawn and many other things. Not only have they canonized that, but in the visual dictionary, I believe they've also canonized or recanonized Darth Revan as one of the Sith Trooper legions are named after Revan. Now, I know this isn't within the movie, but I just wanted to throw it out there. It's like, that's, it's kind of cool. But I really liked the Force dyad talk that they had going on. That was something that was built on top of The Last Jedi and the bond that exists between Rey and Ben Solo. Really cool to see more exploration into that. I was worried that we would actually kind of have that fizzle out in this movie, but it's so hard to ignore when the whole Last Jedi kind of evolved around that link. And it was cool to see that expanded upon and given a name, that this is it's now officially known as a Force dyad. And if you look up Force dyad, which I'll do right now, let's look up Force dyad. It says on the Wikipedia that a Force dyad was a phenomenon describing two Force sensitive beings who collectively shared the power of one individual, connecting them across space and time. Rey Skywalker and Ben Solo, who shared a Force bond, formed a Force dyad during the New Republic era, during which time it had been the first seen in generations. As Kylo Ren, Ben revealed to Rey that they were a dyad in the Force during her mission on Kijimi with Finn and Poe Dameron. This is 35 years after the Battle of Yavin. So it was when Rey and Ben came together to fight Darth Sidious. It goes on. During the battle at Exegol, the Sith Lord grabbed the two using the Force and inadvertently drew some of their life force. Learning that they were a dyad in the process, despite Ben's attempts to hide it from him, Sidious then proceeded to exploit this by siphoning their powerful connection, rejuvenating himself while weakening the pair. Records of a Force dyad exist in the form of an incantation written out in the Sith Old Tongue by the Sith Eternal Cultists, denoting the specific nature of the phenomena. The text is near identical to the Sith doctrine, the Rule of Two, but inflection, marks, and line breaks change specific meaning in certain words. So appearances. The Force Awakens had its first appearance, apparently, although I am struggling to recall where. The Last Jedi was where we really see it play out, and then the Rise of Skywalker first identified it as the name. If you have the visual dictionary, I'm sure you can grab a little more information on that. So, the Life Force makes its return in terms of the terms I was talking about earlier on. Life Force is a thing now, and it exists as part of the bond as a result of a Force dyad. So it's a power like life itself, and Palpatine being able to siphon that power. I thought all that stuff was really cool. I thought all that stuff was really out there, and I can think, I have my suspicions that Chris Terrio was probably behind that. He seems to me the more kind of out there thinker when it comes to the two writers on this film, between JJ and Chris Terrio. I think Chris Terrio deserves this credit. Now, I'm just jumping to conclusions here, but it doesn't sound or look like anything that JJ would have come up with. So yeah, it was cool. I like that. I like the whole Force dyad thing. I think that's really interesting. I think this is the last thing I'm gonna just say that I liked. I feel like I've kept this list pretty long enough to call it a non-negative review. But I like the fact that they were hinting at the fact that Finn is Force sensitive through the whole movie. It's something that a lot of people did, in fact, buzz about before the movie had come out. They saw Finn with a lightsaber. It's apparent in many of the books leading into The Force Awakens that Finn was one of the best fighters in the First Order. He was very gifted with those batons, the riot batons or whatever they're called. I'm blanking on it now. I believe it was Before the Awakening. There was a junior novel written called Before the Awakening. That novel was split into 3 sections: one about Rey, one about Finn, one about Poe. And Finn, it's evident that he's very gifted, a very gifted fighter, and therefore is supposed to be the explanation for how he can handle a lightsaber so well later on in The Force Awakens against the injured Kylo Ren. It also explains a lot to do with his duel in The Last Jedi with Captain Phasma. Captain Phasma is, now if you've read Phasma, they make her out to be this tremendously amazing warrior. It's not something I think resonates with the movie, but they do make it very apparent as well that she's become this clunky, robotic kind of cog in this massive machine, which is the First Order, and the greed of all the technology that she's exposed to, being a native from a planet that has nothing. It really soaks her in, and it changes her. And if you've never read that book before, it is an amazing book. I had absolutely, low expectations going into the book, having not cared about Captain Phasma at all after I saw The Force Awakens. And I was very pleasantly surprised. I got to commend, I think it was Delilah S. Dawson that wrote that book. And, I thought it was fantastic. So, give it a read. It's a good read. Finn is a Force sensitive. That was cool. I like that. And JJ, I believe, revealed more recently that is the thing that he was trying to tell Rey throughout the film, is not his feelings towards her, but that he is Force sensitive. So that is cool. I do like that. And again, about the exclusivity of using the Force. I think this has been hinted at enough throughout the whole sequel era, through the books and the comics and the films now that we've had, that Finn is an extraordinary fighter compared to a lot of other people, and that he is in fact probably a Force user. As far as Poe goes, if you've read Shattered Empire, you can see a bit of his origins there, and need I say more with the whole ordeal of the Force tree and everything that he's been raised under, and I can't help but think that he might not be a Force user, but I have a feeling that his connection to the Force is a little more amplified through those midi-chlorians in his bloodstream. But yeah, that's also kind of interesting. But anyways, I believe that's it. I believe that's all the things that I liked about the movie. I know that they did a lot of fan servicing with the whole Reylo thing. Honestly, I've never really, it's not bothered me, and I thought it was nice. I've never been wanting it. I've never been not wanting it. So I'm quite neutral on that fact, on that front. I've actually kind of been rooting for a trilogy that doesn't have nearly as much romance as the other two have. And, I think it's safe to say that it's all been kept pretty light. So that's, it's been nice. It's been nice. I think that kiss was between Rey and Ben was not out of place. And I really appreciated that. So now I'm going to move on to things that I didn't like about the movie. Overall, again, I want to rate this like a solid 6 out of 10. I just want to say, first off, like within the context of the trilogy, this movie might seem like it works really well, but there was a lot of things that stuck out to me that just don't work in regards to following up the other films. And I'll just start off with the most blatant, obvious one that I think I saw in the movie that a lot of people didn't catch, was when Ben Solo, when he's stranded on the Endor system, when Rey steals his ship, we're led to assume that he takes a Imperial class TIE fighter from the wreckage of the Death Star and flies to Exegol with it. Not only does he not have a Wayfinder device to make it there, because similar to astrogational coordinates for charting a path through that nebula that he has to fly through to get to Exegol. Not everyone, there's a very specific path, I guess, that you have to take to navigate through it. But that aside, even if he is kind of force attuned enough to fly extremely well and make it through, he doesn't have a hyperdrive. And TIE fighters of the Imperial era do not have hyperdrives. This was a decision that was made on JJ's part for nostalgia, to have the shot of the X-Wing next to the TIE fighter. And it was totally uncalled for. I did not like that at all. I hated it. I just absolutely hated it. It was a very typical JJ thing to do. And TIE fighters don't have hyperdrives. This has been going on since 1977, when Ben Kenobi says in the Millennium Falcon that, they see a TIE fighter flying around, and he says, no, it's a short-ranged fighter, and then Luke goes on to say, oh, it must have been, maybe it gotten lost, it must have been part of a convoy or something. And then they realize that it's going to that moon, which ends up being the Death Star. It's always been a part of canon. It's always been a part of Star Wars that TIE fighters don't have hyperdrives. First Order TIE fighters do. First Order TIE fighters do have hyperdrives. It's a part of the whole new technology. First Order TIE fighters also have shields. Imperial TIE fighters don't have shields, and they don't have hyperdrives. It's like, it's a simple rule. And JJ broke that rule. I feel like if you're going to make a film within a saga of a cohesive story universe like this, you have to stay true to the in-universe rules. I don't see a Tony Stark turning into the Hulk anytime soon. Let's not all of a sudden start putting hyperdrives in TIE fighters, please. So yeah, that was one thing that stuck out to me as a big no-no. And it's going to be hard to forgive. I think Story Group is going to have to patch up this hole with a story, about a prototype TIE fighter now, and basically retroactively fix that choice within the film. And until we get that, I'm going to have a problem. So, whatever. I had a big issue with Palpatine's return. Now, I know that this is the entire hook for the movie, and I think that's why, is because it was used as a hook for the movie, because Colin Trevorrow left, because they couldn't figure out how to end the series. It was kind of a retroactive thing to say, hey, the only way to end this is to bring back the only good bad guy that people actually like or want to see, and that is Palpatine. He's the guy that's been working behind the scenes for the last 6 movies, And let's just make him the guy that's been working behind the scenes in this trilogy as well. So I feel like the choice in the expanded universe was also a poor decision. I'm not on board with that either. With the whole Palpatine cloning plot that they had going on there, it was just kind of eh. I mean, if you've ever read the Dark Empire series, it's just, I've never been on board with it. It's always kind of demoted the entire sacrifice that Anakin makes as the chosen one. And it is very clear that Anakin has been the chosen one for a very long time. And, you know, whether we get it in the original trilogy or not, even if it is a retroactive decision on George Lucas's part to throw that little tidbit in there in the prequels to say that Anakin is the chosen one, it's not like it changes the outcome of the film. I mean, it doesn't change the fact that Vader still was redeemed by Luke Skywalker and ends up destroying the Sith, therefore balancing the Force. Balancing the Force doesn't mean eradicating the dark side. Balancing the Force just means balancing the Force. It never prophesized destroying the Sith or destroying the dark side or whatever. Balancing the Force is just balancing the Force. Now, you can do some research into balancing the Force, but I do want to read off the entire prophecy of the Chosen One, just so you have a little bit of a better idea on like what the Chosen One is supposed to do. So let me try and find it here. All right. I'm first going to read this one from page 41 in Master and Apprentice. This is a book written by Claudia Gray, excellent author in the new Star Wars canon, who's consistently proven herself to write extremely good Star Wars books. So page 41, I'll just read it in context so you can kind of get it. Later that evening in Qui-Gon's quarters, Obi-Wan dared to say, "So far as I can tell, Master, the prophecies seem extremely vague." Qui-Gon looked up from the records Obi-Wan had brought him. His long grayish-brown hair fell loose down his back, a sign that he intended to go to sleep soon. But he had never failed to respond to Obi-Wan's curiosity. "You've learned old Alderaanian?" "Not exactly, but I've picked up enough to make sense of what I'm collecting." Obi-Wan tugged nervously at his Padawan braid, then stopped as he caught himself at it. It was a bad habit he hoped to break. "One of these prophecies says something about, 'She who will be born to darkness will give birth to darkness.' It gives no hint at all as to who that is, or what kind of darkness this is, or when it will happen." It goes on about another prophecy that's ended up being fulfilled in the book. That prophecy is when the Kyber that is not Kyber shines forth, the time of prophecy will be at hand. It's fulfilled in the book when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon come across a crystal that's very similar to Kyber in structure, but not actually Kyber. It's in the book's climax, and Obi-Wan's crystal is switched for the faux Kyber, and it still creates a weak lightsaber blade, but it references the not Kyber shines forth. And the events of the book are about a year after Anakin is possibly born, and also a year after Dooku leaves the Order, the Jedi Order. So, but the first one that I really want to kind of narrow in on here is the "She who will be born to darkness will give birth to darkness." This is obviously talking about Leia. Leia, born just after her father Anakin becomes Darth Vader. She would basically just go on to have Ben Solo, who eventually becomes Kylo Ren. So within the Disney canon, it is hinted at the fact that this has been a prophecy foretold that, or it's, I guess, pre-establishing the fact that Kylo Ren will be a part of the story. Which I thought was kind of cool. It's kind of a nice thing that, this book came out this year, and it's nice that they are foreshadowing his coming, whether, because there are multiple prophecies. So it is very nice that is made apparent. So let's jump to another prophecy here. Page 133. this really gets to the core of what I want to talk about in regards to the Chosen One. So I'm on page 133. I'm gonna read this little piece here in context. If you don't know who Rey'S is Dooku's first Jedi apprentice, and he's talking with Qui-Gon here about prophecies. So, with a grin, Rey'S rose from the sofa and motioned for Qui-Gon to follow. "Let me show you some history worth studying." Several minutes later, Qui-Gon sat next to Rey'S in the Jedi archives, looking at the one and only holocron that had ever interested him, the one that held the ancient prophecies. Some were majestic, some were mysterious, a few seemed laughable, but they were all fascinating. Qui-Gon kept reading, unable to stop. "Only through sacrifice of many Jedi will the Order cleanse the sin done to the Nameless. The danger of the past is not past, but sleeps in an egg. When the egg cracks, it will threaten the galaxy entire. When the Force itself sickens, past and future must split and combine. A chosen one shall come, born of no father, and through him will ultimate balance in the Force be restored." "The ancient mystics had these visions in trances?" Qui-Gon asked. Rey'S nodded. He sat on the opposite side of the long table, going through holocron archives as rapidly as Qui-Gon himself. "I don't even want to know what kind of spice they were smoking." Qui-Gon wondered whether or how he might be able to learn more about that. That was something to worry about later. Right now, his head buzzed with all the prophecy he'd read, all the possibilities of the future they hinted at. The entire universe seemed to have grown larger in an instant, full of incredible possibilities. But should he trust it? "Dooku said I shouldn't pay attention to this holocron," Qui-Gon said. "He doesn't believe in the prophecies." "Since when?" Rey'S' confusion was totally sincere. "He's the one who turned me onto it." "Used to be. You could hardly pry this holocron out of his quarters." "I don't know when or why. He didn't explain." "I'm going to have to ask him about that," Rey'S said. "If that changed, wow, then a lot's changed about Dooku." "Don't ask him yet," Qui-Gon protested. When Rey'S looked at him in surprise, he shrugged. "Not until I finished my report, anyway." Rey'S laughed so loud that Jocasta knew, gave him a stern look. So the first part, actually, first I want to plug Claudia Gray, Master and Apprentice, awesome book. So give it a read. It's awesome. Only through sacrifice of many Jedi will the Order cleanse the sin done to the Nameless. So this could be in reference to the Jedi and maybe the clones, the Nameless, the clones that are given numbers, not names. I don't really know. It could also reference how the Jedi operate. I mean, at this point in time, they are operating within the context of their own code, and in a way, in a creepy way, the way that the First Order raises their stormtroopers is very similar to the way that the Jedi raise their younglings. They take them from an infancy age, and basically, I mean, they do have names, but it's interesting that that parallel is there. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But it also could be referencing to the First Order stormtroopers, because those they don't have names either. Next part is the danger of the past is not the past, but sleeps in an egg. When the egg cracks, it will threaten the entire galaxy. This could be talking about either of the Death Stars, or the return of Palpatine in the Rise of Skywalker. And in Aftermath, I want to read a little excerpt from Aftermath as well. This is written by Chuck Wendig. Empire's End, Aftermath, is the third book in the trilogy. So, before Palpatine's demise at the hands of the rebels, The computers finished their calculations, finally finding a way through the unknown. The Emperor was convinced that something waited for him out there, some origin of the Force, some dark presence formed of malevolent substance. He said he could feel the waves of it radiating out. Now that the way was clear, the Emperor called it a signal, conveniently, one that only he could hear. Even his greatest enforcer, Vader, seemed oblivious to it. And Vader also claimed mastery over the dark force. Did he not? Rex believed Palpatine had gone mad. What he was receiving was nothing more than his own precious wishes broadcast back to himself, an echo of his own devising. He believed that something lay beyond. And so that became a singular obsession. When you believe in magic, it is easy to see all the universe as evidence of it. So maybe the prophecy refers to a threat that will be that was introduced in The Rise of Skywalker, possibly the Star Destroyers breaking out of the surface of that ice or the ground or whatever it was. So maybe when the egg cracks, or the dangers of the past is not past. So the dangers of the past being, the Empire is not past, but sleeps in an egg inside the shell of this planet. And when the egg cracks, it will threaten the entire galaxy. So when these Star Destroyers rise up, these Star Destroyers of Imperial era, mind you, rise up, the threat of the galaxy, it's gonna be galactic wide. This threat, which is very evident that this is referencing Rise of Skywalker. Next line is, when the Force itself sickens, past and future must split and combine. So the Force, it's saying that the Force is going to be sick. It's very possible that this is in reference to the imbalance that has been re-brought upon the galaxy. It's something I have a minor problem with, which I'm going to talk about shortly after this, but it's very likely talking about the fact that with Palpatine's return, the dark side grows in strength, and past and future must split and combine. This might refer to the past Jedi that basically start encouraging Rey in her final stand, and become instrumental in helping her cure the Force and bringing balance again. And a chosen one shall come, born of no father, and through him will ultimate balance in the Force be restored. So now this is where we get a little it's strange, because this is now talking about a male. Through him will ultimate balance be restored. So now Anakin is the chosen one. It's the first version of the chosen one prophecy that we've seen. The wording of the prophecy is notable, and it's rather than outright stating that the chosen one will restore balance, as it's framed in the prequels, it states that it'll happen through him. So, since Anakin has children and then grandchildren, it is, you might think that it is possibly referring to the Skywalker family as a whole restoring balance, I guess. This is a bit unclear, but what makes it more unclear, and this is like one of the main things that I had a problem with, is that there is that line from Anakin Skywalker that he says to Rey, the Force surrounds you, Rey. Bring back balance to the Force as I once did. And that essentially confirms the fact that Anakin is the chosen one. I do also want to play this little clip. So listen very closely. This is George Lucas talking about the chosen one.
You got to remember, this is one movie, and it's meant to be seen 1 through 6. So I think when you watch the actual movie in order, the story will become very clear that Anakin is the chosen one.
You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force. You believe it's this boy?
And even when Anakin turns into Darth Vader, he is still the chosen one. The prophecy is that Anakin will bring balance to the Force and destroy the Sith. He becomes Darth Vader. Darth Vader does become the hero. Darth Vader does destroy the Sith, meaning himself and the Emperor. He does it because he is redeemed by a son.
So, you have accepted the truth.
I've accepted the truth that you were once Anakin Skywalker, my father.
That name no longer has any meaning for me.
It is the name of your true self you've only forgotten. I know there is good in you.
So the prophecy is true. And by doing that, he redeems himself and goes from being Darth Vader back to being Anakin again.
You were right about me. Tell your sister. You were right.
Everybody thought of Darth Vader as this big evil guy that, had no heart. He was just evil. But in the end, it's not that at all. And here's a guy who has lost everything.
He believes that he's the chosen one. He's not doing wrong things knowing that it's having a negative impact. So there's that sort of naivety to him now that wasn't there before. And it makes him more human in a lot of ways.
All right, so George here on record says, basically confirms that, Anakin has always been intended to be the chosen one. And here it's interesting that he says specifically bring back balance to the Force by destroying the Sith, similar to what Rey now does in The Rise of Skywalker. The main problem that I have here is that this prophecy has been foretold for so long, and it's confirmed in The Rise of Skywalker that Anakin is the chosen one because he says, bring back balance to the Force, Rey, as I once did. Rey is not a descendant of Anakin, so it means that she's not connected to the Skywalker family, as of yet, at least, until she takes the name. But there's no relevance there. There's no connection between Anakin and Rey whatsoever, other than the fact that her granddaddy is the old master of now long dead Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader. So the main problem I have, I guess, is why this prophecy for, I guess 1,000 years or more, and 30 years after the Force is balanced, it needs to be rebalanced. Why this whole build up for the finale and the conclusion of the chosen one, when now, even though it's been established many times over that Anakin is the chosen one, why now are we getting a story that's tacked on to the end that, has this girl from nowhere who ends up not being from nowhere, having to rebalance the Force once again because the first time around didn't work good enough. This is the part that really drives me up the wall is that this whole thing is kind of so retroactively placed on, the saga that it's like, hey, there's this massive buildup to the prophecy being fulfilled by Anakin Skywalker. And, we've had confirmation through George Lucas. We've had confirmation through the Clone Wars. We've had confirmation through many books and comics. And we're talking about stuff that's been published by Disney as well. This has been a lead up for many years. Like, there's no going back on that. This one movie can't retcon all of that content, especially within the Disney canon era. And, I just, nobody in their right mind should accept that. Now, trying to work around that problem, the only conclusion that I can think of is, okay, the Force has now been sickened and needs to be rebalanced again. So I guess this prophecy has to happen 2 times over or something. I really don't know. I really don't know. This is it. This whole thing has just thrown it completely, out of what I thought might happen. What a lot of people thought might happen. And, it's part of the reason why a lot of people, I think, were angry with Last Jedi, is that it gave them something they weren't expecting. And the argument there is that, even if it's a surprise, that it doesn't make a good movie. well, I got news, retconning a prophecy so that you can all of a sudden make your own prophecy doesn't make a good movie either. This is a very poor decision to essentially having to rebalance the Force again. But then again, this all spawns back to the whole initial return of Palpatine as well. So, my problem with Rey having to reestablish balance and everything all has to do with Palpatine's return. The entire thing about Rey being a Palpatine, okay, also spawns back from the return of Palpatine, but I had an issue with her being a Palpatine because it honestly feels a bit like sacrilege taking this entire Skywalker saga and then handing it off to a Palpatine. Now, I know the sins of the father don't affect the child, whatever the expression is there, but I did think it was cool that she does defy the legacy of her last name, only to take on the Skywalker name in anyways. And so I thought that was interesting, but I thought that the entire existence of her being a Palpatine, that's not nobody. And when JJ and Chris Terry were talking about this, about her lineage and stuff, they said that they wouldn't, that she's a nobody, that and it's like, okay, well, she's not nobody if she's Palpatine. I mean, that's not nobody. The long lost heir to the Empire being Empress Palpatine is not a nobody. So I had a problem with this. I had a problem with the fact that at some point in the past, Emperor Palpatine has, I guess, assumingly shagged some woman to have a child, a son, who will then escape his clutch and go off and have a child with some other woman, which ends up being Rey. That entire connection of being his granddaughter was just so out there. It's just so weird, and I felt so stapled on to the whole saga, and bring such disrespect to what's come before it. I had a really big issue with that. But I think that's probably the biggest issue that I've had with this whole movie is the whole Rey Palpatine situation. Other than that, though, the rest of the movie, not bad. The climactic part at the end was so underwhelming. Despite all the great Ben Solo moments, the whole her whipping out the second lightsaber and reflecting Palpatine's lightning back in his face again, duped by his own lightning again for the second time, so underwhelming. It's such a terrible quick way to finish him off. And the fact that every single Star Destroyer had super weapons on them again, planet killing weapons for the fourth time. It's like, come on, JJ. I mean, switch things up. Let's go. I mean, we've had Starkiller Base. We've had 2 Death Stars now at this point. We don't need 500 more planet-killing weapons. I just thought that was so weak. Such a weak way to conclude this series. In a way, you might argue, okay, yes, the only right way to finish it because this is the way it started. But at the same time, it's it's something we've seen so many times. It's I just want something new. I think that's fair enough to say. So, if you disagree, let me know. But it just seems so old at this point, and so almost too typical of them to do. Yeah, that's what I have to say on that. The last thing I think that I want to talk about here is because all this, this is the whole negativity about things. And I'm skipping over a few minor things, but, main things being, the whole TIE fighter situation, the whole Rey Palpatine and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I just don't get it, man. Like the whole Palpatine using lightning to kill her, despite he wants her to kill him. So okay, maybe he wants her to kill him out of hate and not the way of the Jedi in self-defense. But if he's aware of the fact that this lightning is tearing apart his face, why does he keep, why does he keep doing it? He was duped by his lightning the first time around in Revenge of the Sith. And that moment, when he does that, it's actually a little more relevant because not only is he putting the pressure on Anakin Skywalker because he's killing himself. And he says, I have the power to save the one you love. You must choose. And Mace Windu's defending himself, reflecting the lightning back in his face. Palpatine's lightning on Mace Windu because he doesn't have a lightsaber and it's the only way that he can prevent him from taking his head off. Anakin has to make the hard choice of choosing between killing this man that might be able to save his wife or taking off Mace's hand and accepting the fact that Palpatine's going to kill this guy. It's a sporadic decision that he has to make and one that I think given more time and thought, he would probably make the right decision. Because we know Anakin. And he's not ready to kill Dooku. But this little birdie in his ear whispers, do it. And he does it because he is pushed. Anakin is pushed. And just as he was pushed by his pain from before, it's the fear of loss. And that's something that Yoda tells him to train himself to let go of, is the fear of losing the people that he's attached to. His attachments. That's also a big reason for Ahsoka in the Clone Wars as well. And Yoda mentions to Obi-Wan, he says, the greatest challenge for Anakin will be, to let go of his apprentice when the time comes. And whether this is foreshadowing what happens to her or not, I mean, obviously it's evident that we see that, eventually when Ahsoka decides to leave the Order, Anakin is just torn about it. He misses her dearly and doesn't want her to leave. And that for me was probably the most emotional part of that show. But I just didn't think that this whole lightning thing went over too well in this movie. It was just a very underwhelming climax. And I wish that it would have gone differently. The last thing I want to talk about is the Wheels of the Force. This has nothing to do with my like or dislike for The Rise of Skywalker, really. But seeing as we didn't get George's sequels, I do want to talk about the Wheels very briefly because it was brought up to me today by a friend that George's sequels, that he pointed out that fans would have hated them. And I'll just read that little clip here from the interview. I believe it was with James Cameron. It's called Inside James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction. You can look this up online. And George Lucas says... well, actually, let's start with what James Cameron says. There's an ecosystem inside us called the microbiome that they're just learning about now. George says, the next 3 Star Wars films, he's referencing those, we're going to get into a microbiotic world. But there's this world of creatures that operate differently than we do. I call them the Wills. And the Wills are the ones who actually control the universe. They feed off the Force. James Cameron says, you are creating a religion, George. And George Lucas says, back in the day, I used to say, ultimately, what this means is we were just cars, vehicles for the Wills to travel around in. We're vessels for them. And the conduit is the midi-chlorians. The midi-chlorians are the ones that communicate with the Wills. The Wills, in a general sense, they are the Force. And then the interview continues on. James Cameron says, but you're putting detail and a facade of science around an idea that's pretty timeless, which is the spirit, the soul, heaven, causation. But in your world building, you're going back to archetype, which is spirit, the Godhead, all that sort of thing. And George Lucas says, all the way back to with the Force and the Jedi and everything. The whole concept of how things happen was laid out completely from the beginning to the end. But I never got to finish. I never got to tell people about it. So now he's talking about, about him selling the company and someone else being J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson finishing that story and never actually telling the story about what he wanted to tell, which was how the Force even works and how it how about it would have gone deeper. It would have gone into the light and the dark side of the Force, the ancient order of the wills, the shaman of the wills, and all that, all the story threads that have to do with the mysteries that surrounded the Jedi being immortalized in the Force and becoming part of the conduit of the Force. And there was a Yoda arc in the Clone Wars, which was great. We had appearances by the priestesses of the Force, and it's never confirmed that they are the Wills, but I think a lot of people like to think that they might be. The Wills were basically a community of beings who notably wrote the Journal of the Wills. In canon, we've had, Rogue One kind of got into the Guardians of the Wills, and Chirrut Inway was a part of the Force-worshipping monastic order. And Jeddah played a very important sacred place. The Temple of the Kyber was also known as the Temple of the Wills, and that was his home there. So, George Lucas has always had this idea since the original Star Wars script. Like, we're going back now to like the 70s, when George Lucas was writing Star Wars. This is like, so if you are a fan of Star Wars Episode 4, 5, and 6 and love those movies to death, this is the inspiration and the original draft of like what would have been an explanation to you. It's something that would have been explored in those sequel films that he would have done. So the original Star Wars draft was, I believe, called the Journal of the Wills, and then The Adventures of Luke Starkiller or something. So, excuse me. His sequels would have really gotten into the microbiotic world that is the Wills. Now, I think people take the word microbiotic, that descriptor, they take it very too literally. You can't take it literally because it's going to sound absolutely terrible. It's going to sound very boring. But if you enjoyed the arc with Yoda in the Clone Wars, getting to learn about the depths of immortality through the guidance of Qui-Gon Jinn and the priestesses of the Force, I think, this sequel trilogy would have been like amazing. It would have gotten into all the mysteries that we have. And there's two groups of people out there. There's two groups of fans. There's the fans that don't want to know answers to absolutely anything whatsoever. And then there's the fans that want to know answers, like me. There's people that want to know more about the lore, people that want to know more about the reasoning behind things and how things work. And we just get really invested with the story and the answers. And it's fine to not want to know the answers. That's fine. That's a big part of why people just hated the prequel so much, is because it provided too many answers for them. I get it. Part of my problem with the new movie is that it creates a lot of questions without answers. It creates a lot of questions without the intent of giving answers either. And these are answers that we want. These are answers that are, I think, are important to the narrative of the film. And I'm just going to play a little bit of an example for you here.
I've had this for ages. Kept it locked away.
Where'd you get that?
A good question. For another time. Take it. Find your friend. Those beasts. They're here.
So this is a really good example of JJ creating a question that we never got an answer to. Now, when George made questions that we don't fully have the answers, we still had a lot of the puzzle pieces. I mean, when Luke asks Obi-Wan about his days in the Clone Wars, Obi-Wan follows up with pieces that George already had a backbone to. He already had the outline, and he's able to use that and fill it in. And even though Maz Kanata says, it's a story for another time, she just shrugs it off. Like there's no hint that she found it. There's no hint that somebody she knows found it. Like we get nothing out of this. And you know, it's the same thing of what JJ always has been doing. He always has this empty question. It's basically just a plot hole. I wouldn't call the moment where Luke and Ben are in the hut a plot hole. I would call that an interesting story hook, which it asks, we can ask questions about it, but it doesn't change the narrative of the story. Taking the previous 6 films and building on top of it, and having this lightsaber show up out of nowhere that's been long lost for the last 2 films, or film and a half, or whatever you want to call it. That's a bit of a plot hole unless you can explain how it came back. I mean, the last we saw it was it tumbling down to Kingdom Come. So, JJ, answers, please. And we just never got any. So just to freshen up your memory, let me just play a little clip here.
No, my father didn't fight in the wars. He was a navigator on a spice freighter.
That's what your uncle told you. He didn't hold with your father's ideals, thought he should have stayed here and not gotten involved.
You fought in the Clone Wars?
Yes. I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father.
I wish I'd known him.
He was the best star pilot in the galaxy. And a cunning warrior. I understand you've become quite a good pilot yourself. And he was a good friend. Which reminds me, I have something here for you. Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough, but your uncle wouldn't allow it. He feared you might follow old Obi-Wan on some damn fool idealistic crusade like your father did.
Sir, if you'll not be needing me, I'll close down for a while.
Sure, go ahead.
What is it?
Your father's lightsaber. This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight. Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age. For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. Before the Dark Times. Before the Empire.
How did my father die?
A young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father. Now the Jedi are all but extinct. Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force.
The Force?
Now, the Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together.
So George eventually, I don't know exactly if he retroactively kind of made Darth Vader Luke's father or what, but you know, it's almost, when you listen to this clip, and if you watch the way that Obi-Wan carefully describes how the Jedi fell, it's a very sensitive subject, and it's a very sensitive thing for him to talk about Anakin Skywalker. But yeah, I think the main failure that happened through this whole entire sequel trilogy is that there was no unified vision. There was no beginning, middle, end that was planned out the way that George had, even if it was on a yellow pad sheet of notes and a couple sketches, a couple notes that just kept it on track. It's something. At least it's something. It's not what we got. And we got nothing like that. We had 3 films done by 3 and then 2 different people with their own visions and their own voice and their own opinion and personal story that they wanted to tell within the realm of Star Wars, and there was no unification amongst that. You know, I respect the fact that they wanted to tell the story they wanted to tell. You know, George told the story he was telling, and now that he's sold it, we have JJ and Rian Johnston sharing the stories that they want to tell. Fine. But I mean, at least it's a trilogy. I mean, let's at least, gather our senses and accept the fact that we need unification amongst this. We want this trilogy to not only be, part of the saga. We don't want to feel like it's tacked on to the end, and the prequels don't feel like they're tacked on to the beginning either. They're carefully woven to the beginning. And I would say that these sequels have not been carefully woven in to the end. It's been stapled on. Boom. $1 billion money right there. It's all about the profits. Let's just get this ball rolling. Let's kick it off. In the Charlie Rose interview, George says, to do these movies right, it would take me about 10 years. And, Disney has not only pumped out the sequel trilogy in like 6 years, 5 or 6 years, but they've put out 2 anthology movies and the Disney Plus series as well. Like, I know this is a big company and they got a lot going on, and Lucasfilm as a whole is a very small company, or it used to be. But I mean, if you're to do these movies right, of which we've seen evidence that having these all bashed out the door just doesn't work. And now they're cluing into that, which is why we're going to be getting a bit of a hiatus. It's also why Solo was such a flop. There's plenty of evidence for all this. So that's also a big problem that I have is just the entire direction of the sequel trilogy, the whole planning phase, the entire execution phase, and just the mess that it's been. Just an absolute mess. So there's my negativity part of this entire discussion. And I don't really want to go on any more about it. I mean, I could rant on about it for a long time. But, I'm sure you'll get little tidbits here and there going forward now that the movie's been released. And I'm if you've made it this far in the episode, thank you so much. I know it's a little longer than normal, and it might be a little more or less on the impatient side of listening to, for 2 hours if you have other things to do. But if you're on your way to work, or you're at work, or doing your chores, whatever, I appreciate you listening to this far in the podcast. Your opinion matters. Your opinion matters. Go see The Rise of Skywalker. Form your own opinion about this movie, because this is all just the way I feel about it. And you need to make that choice for yourself, very similar to how Rey makes the choice to be a Skywalker. So take my word for it. Go see episode 9. Thank you again for listening to Star Wars Escape Pod. I'm your host, Josh, and above all, go see this movie again. Just go see it. Form your own opinion. If you haven't seen it and you've just been listening to reviews and breakdowns, and just go see it. Form your own opinion. This is your right as a Star Wars fan to just feel the way you feel about this movie. It was made for all the people who want to enjoy it. So as a fan, I will get by. I'm disheartened with the entire direction of this trilogy. It's not just this movie, although I did feel it was the best of this trilogy by far. So, time will tell. Time will tell. Next Friday, or I guess it's this Friday, the 27th, we'll have Episode 8, the finale, and the conclusion to Season 1 of The Mandalorian on Disney+. Look for a roundtable Friday or Saturday, whenever it drops. We'll be putting that out. And that is on the 27th. So in the meantime, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. And, spend some time with your family. And, I hope that, you got some great Star Wars toys for Christmas, or maybe for other people. If something stuck out to you this episode, please shoot some feedback, comments. We'd love to hear from you. SW Escape Podcast, that's our Twitter, and the escapepod at outlook.com. Please send us some voice memos, voice recordings. That's always welcome as well. I can play them and break them down, answer any questions on the show as well. We'd be happy to hear from you. And thanks again for listening. Once again, I'm your host, Josh. Stay tuned for more episodes coming in the future. May the Force be with you.